and welcome back. I was asked to do another video on binding, so that is what I'm doing. I have a quilt here ready to bind, and I am using the backing fabric also as my binding. So I've got my binding strips cut, and what I did was I took the width of fabric cut it by 2.5 inches. So this is as wide as the fabric bolt was, and it's 2.5 inches wide this way. So I've cut enough strips to make my binding on this. And the way I figured that out is there is an app called the Robert Kaufman app, and that tells you everything. It tells you how much you'd need for backing, for batting, for binding, for borders. Even if you're putting multiple borders on, you can put up to 4 different borders on it, and it will tell you how much each border needs in fabric. It is the best quilting calculator app that I have found as far as figuring that kind of thing out. So I don't have to do the math. Love it. So I've done that, and I've got my strips, and I'm going to sew them together now to make the binding. So let's go down to the sewing machine. I am going to take my strips and put 2 of them right sides together like this. I want them at that angle. You can pin it if you want to. I'm not going to pin it. I'm going to sew from this corner to this corner. And I'm going to line them up. I'm going to take it to the sewing machine. And once I've got it lined up, I'm going to start sewing from the one corner to the other corner. Once I've got that, then I'm going to pull my scissors out and clip off this excess over that seam allowance. That was right there. I don't want that anymore. I'm going to cut that over that seam allowance so that now it's straight across. I'm going to take the end of this piece, and I'm going to take my next piece, and I'll put them again right sides together at the angle, and I'll stitch from here across to here. So now I've got that seam right here. I'm going to cut that excess away, maybe about 1/4 inch away from that seam. And then when I open it up, they're straight across. I'm going to do the same thing again until I run out of strips. Here I am at the angle. Take it to the machine. Sew it across. And then clip off that excess. And then you've got your strip. So I'm going to keep doing this until I run out of my strips, and I'll be back with you. Okay, I've got all of my strips sewn together. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this and throw it to my right side. I'm left-handed. It depends on which way you are, left-handed or right-handed, as to where you throw them, but I throw mine to the right. I keep this one piece out, the end piece. I'm going to take my quilt, open it up, and lay it with the back up. If I'm hand stitching this whole thing on, then I'm going to start on the front. But I'm not, I'm machine stitching mine. So I am going to start from the back. And then I'm going to take, you can iron this binding flat like that, and I used to do that. I don't for the most part anymore because it is an extra step and it's time consuming. But if it's easier for you to have this ironed, then please, by all means, iron this. But I'm going to go about halfway down one side, and I'm going to pin it on the side. I'm going to fold it in half lengthwise, and I'm going to pin it, which I'm going to use a Wonder Clip. And I'm going to leave about this much dangling. That's what we'll use to connect the end piece to the beginning piece when we get to that point. So right now, I'm going to leave this part dangling, maybe 8 inches or so. You mean, you don't have to do a whole lot, but I usually try to keep about somewhere in the neighborhood of 8 inches there. Then I'm going to take it to the sewing machine, and I am going to sew at a 1/4 inch seam allowance down the one side on the back of the quilt. I start in the middle so that I have more room to connect the pieces. I don't want to do it on a corner because you've got things that you have to do at the corners, and I don't want it to run into a corner. So that's why I start in the middle. I'm going to sew a 1/4 inch until I get close to this end right here. And then I'm going to pause. And again, if you're not used to this, ironing this piece right here, the binding piece that we're adding on now, ironing it in half might be easier for you. Actually, it probably would be easier for you. It's not hard when you don't iron it, but it is a tad bit easier when it is ironed. So if you're very new to this, then you may want to go ahead and try ironing it first. Okay, I'm going to stop when I get about a 1/4 inch from this end of the quilt, and I'm going to cut my thread. Now there's different rules of thought here. Some people don't cut that thread, they just pull it out and put it back again. I don't. I like to cut mine. So I'm going to take my quilt, and I'm going to have this piece of binding that's hanging down here. I'm going to fold it. Let's see if you can see this good. I'm going to take it. It's going this way now, but I need it to go this way around this next edge. So therefore, I put my hand here. I fold it to where it goes that way. It causes a crease right here. I hold that crease down, flip it over my hand, take my other hand and hold it down there so that now my piece is going the way I need it to go. And I've got this at the corner. Okay, so now I'm going to take this over to the sewing machine, and I'm going to start sewing down this other side. If you didn't get that, if you're not with me all the way here, don't worry, we've got more sides to do, so we will do it again in just a minute. Then I'm going to start all the way from the corner. I'm not going to go in a 1/4 inch like we stopped a 1/4 inch this way. I'm going to go from the corner, and I'm going to sew this down. Again, using 1/4 inch seam allowance. I'm not pushing it through, I'm just guiding it with this hand here, trying to keep it straight. Keep moving this quilt to where it lays good till I get to this other side, and then we're going to do that corner again. Almost to that next corner, and I'll stop when I get there, about a 1/4 inch from the edge again. right? I'm about a 1/4 inch, doesn't have to be exact. I'm gonna stop it, cut my thread, pull it out, make sure my binding is flat right here. Again, I need it, it's going this way, I need it this way. So I'm gonna take my hand here, I'm gonna flip this up and turn it to where I cause this fold right here, across here. And now it's facing, it's going the right direction, it's just going the wrong way. So I need to flip it back over my hand, take my other hand and hold it down. And now it's going the direction it needs to go. And I've got this triangle right here, this flap. I'm gonna sew that down. So I'm gonna start in the corner, all the way at the edge, and sew down this side, the same way I did that one just a minute ago. When I get to the edge, I'll stop at a 1/4 inch again, and we'll do it all over again. So stay with me. I'll get to the end of this and I'll be back with you. Okay, here we are at our last corner. So we are taking this fabric again. We stopped at a 1/4 inch away from the edge, flipping it over, putting our hand there, flipping it back over our hand, taking our other hand, holding it down, and then taking it back to the sewing machine and stitching it down from the edge just like we did a minute ago. And this will be our last corner to have to do that to. And we're just about to have to meet those two pieces up to close up that binding. So we're going to sew a 1/4 inch. We're going to keep going until we're, I don't know, about 8 inches or so away from the beginning piece. We are almost there. Okay, I'm going to stop about right here because, let me cut this thread and I'll show you how far away I am. Here's where I stopped sewing, right there. Here is where our new piece started. So what we're going to do is we're going to take the end of this binding piece that we had. We're going to cut just a little piece off of it. What I want is a small piece of this binding or any kind of fabric, it doesn't matter, but I use this binding because I know from here to here is 2.5 inches. And that's what I need to measure to connect these bindings, is 2.5 inches. Well, I don't want to have to go get a ruler and do all the measuring, whatever. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to see where I laid this piece. Here's the beginning piece. I'm going to take this piece that I cut off the end of this binding. Remember, from here to here is 2.5 inches. So I'm going to lay it right there at the beginning of where that was, and I know from here to here is 2.5 inches. Well, I need these pieces overlaid 2.5 inches. So instead of measuring, I'm going to lay this piece on top of that one. I'm going to look and see where it stops, and it stops right here. So I'm going to cut right here. Now that binding that's extra, I don't need. But I know that now I can take this little piece out, and I know that these two pieces from here to here is 2.5 inches. So now I know they're going to fit perfectly. I'm going to take these two pieces and I'm going to put them right sides together, just like we were sewing those binding pieces together in the beginning, and I'm going to lay them at that angle. like we did when we put those pieces together. One's going this way and one's going this way. And you can pin it if you want to. I'm going to sew this together at the angle just like we did when we put our binding strips together. So now when I cut it, I'll do just like we did before. Here's my seam. I'm going to cut this excess piece off to get that bulk out of it. So now it's a piece of binding like the other. And now when I open it up, it's the exact size I needed it to be. So I'm going to take it back to the sewing machine, and I am going to sew this little piece here that I hadn't sewn yet. I'm going to sew that down. When I finish this, my binding will be completely on the back, and we'll flip it to the front. Okay, I stitched a little over, so I've got double stitching here so that I know it's locked in pretty good. So now my binding is completely on the back. So all I have to do is flip it to the front, flip my quilt over, pick any place. Again, I pick in the middle of any side. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to flip this over to make my binding. I don't want to pull this, because if I pull it, look what happens to the back. There's hardly any binding back there. That's why we've measured 2.5 inches wide, so that it should fit with this 1/4 inch seam, should fit perfectly. So I barely pull it over. There I've got binding on the back, and I've got binding on the front that should be equal. So I'm going to take it to the sewing machine and start stitching it down. When I get to the corner, I'll show you what I do. And if you guys don't have this acrylic table here, the built-in in your table, if you have a table that allows you to do that, this is the best invention. I recently got this and put it in. I wasn't going to use it, but oh, am I glad I did. It now allows your whole table to be your surface, and your machine's not higher up than your sewing surface. So all of this table is now even with my sewing area. I love it. If you want one, we can get you one through the shop. But anyway, we're going to keep on with this binding. I'm going to keep sewing until I get close to the end of a corner. Checking to make sure I'm not going to run out of bobbin before I get there, but I am good. So we're going to keep going. Hold it down so you can see it. Okay, I'm going to get to the edge, and then I'm going to pull it out so you can see it. I normally wouldn't cut the thread here. I would just keep sewing, but I want you to see it close up. Here's what my corner looks like. Well, there's what my corner looks like. I've stopped about 1/4 inch from the edge. Now I'm going to take this piece of binding that was folded back like that. I'm going to pull it out. I'm going to hold this piece, let me move this so you can see it. I'm going to hold this piece down, and then I'm going to flip it all up so that when it comes up, these two pieces right here should meet. and it should look like that. So now, pretend we hadn't stopped with the thread. We got to the 1/4 inch. Then we folded that piece down and we stitch it down. We're going to turn it and then hold this side down. And now that corner is done. We've got some more corners to do, so if you're not with me completely on this one, we'll do it again. But I'll show you in just a second what it looks like. So see, now that corner is tacked down. So we're going to keep stitching till we get to the other corner and do it again. Keep trying to make sure you can still see it and the quilt doesn't get in your way. I think I'm stitching too fast. The camera's shaking with the vibration, so I'll try to slow down. All right, here we are at the end again. So I'm going to pull this other side binding up. Remember, it was down like that. I'm going to pull it up from the back. I'm going to hold this side down. Stitch a little closer in. Fold this side down to cause that corner to meet one piece to the next. Stitch it down, turn it, and start stitching again. So that way, this corner is tacked down. I'm going to do that to each side, each corner. When I get back to where we started, we are done. So I'll meet you back at the next corner. Here we are at the corner again. We're going to take this other side, flip it up so that the binding, you can see the back binding from the front. Push this corner piece down in it so that it causes this little lip. I'm going to sew it to the edge and flip this back binding up to where the corner of each piece meets, like we did on the other rows, other corners. We're going to turn it, sew again. When we get to that last corner, we'll come back to you. Okay, we're on the last corner. We've got our binding folded on the back over here from when we sewed it on a minute ago. We've gotten almost to a 1/4 inch over here, away from the end. So we're gonna flip this up. That causes this little corner piece to be like that. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna fold this piece down. It causes an angle right there. We'll pull this back piece up, so that it looks like this. You want that angle. Then you're just going to flip it down. And when you flip it down, then you've got this piece and this piece meet with that angle in the corner. See what I mean? That's what you want. So we're going to take this back to the machine and we're going to stitch this side down. We're going to go all the way till we get to the end, and then we're done. Okay, we've come down this side some, so we're going to keep going until we get to this other point. And here is where we started. We're almost there. So we're just going to pull this to the front like we've been doing until we reach where we started. I'm a couple inches away. I'm going to keep sewing until I get to the point where it started. And now I've already got to where I started. So I'm going to stitch just a few more pieces in place, a few more steps, a few more stitches, and then I'm going to cut it. And now my binding is completely sewn down on all sides. So that is how you do binding. The whole binding is sewn down, and on the other side it's sewn down as well. And that's it. That is how you do binding. If you have any questions, let us know. We're here to help. Until next time, happy quilting!